So like we're gonna take away this two and put them to our. That's
I don't even think.
so turn your.
See.
Oh, thanks.
Some more data on Dayton University based on the questions.
Okay, thank you.
I get more changes than anybody else.
Oh my, that's a tall boy. Never would guess that. Oh, Emily, you're the best. Tall boy, bone water.
1 second.
Mute.
Ready to go?
Yeah. Good. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Calling to order the Budget and Finance Education Session, our last education session for this particular budget. I received nothing during the week relative to feedback from anyone, so we're going to go as already announced. And we're starting out with the requested information from last week. Brent, you already sent the paving listing. I didn't get any questions about that. Does anyone need any more information on that? I need my screen on. How does this go on?
I don't know.
I don't have my screen on in order to call on people.
Do we have some lights also?
And Councilwoman Hill requested more light up here, and she's correct. We have none. Thank you. Okay. No other questions about paving. Brent, what about the LDO enforcement? Yes. Yeah, we're good. Yeah, mine's on me. Okay, Brent, go ahead.
Would you want me
Yeah,
to speak
LDO
generally?
enforcement.
Okay. So I know that the council members are going to be preparing a list of enforcement items that they have issues with, especially the systemic continued issues. We plan to evaluate that listing and do a deep dive into each one. And we're looking at this as like a three-legged stool. So one, we don't think that we need to just throw more people into the budget. We think we have some vacancy issues we need to resolve. The plan will help with this situation. But we do need to fill some critical vacancies. We need to look at some process improvements, which Chris Anderson's department, innovation department has been working on this along with folks from LDO. And then the third item is we need to really take a look at to see if any legislative action is required to clarify any items or to put more teeth into the ability to enforce. And I think those things are all things that we can do with the current budget. I think once the budget passes, we're able to fill some vacancies. That's our hope. If it passes, we'll be able to fill some of these vacancies quickly. And I think that we'll be 80% on our way to making the changes we need to make to be able to enforce some things a little better perhaps than we have. I do think that there are going to be some legislative actions that we come back and ask the council to consider. In terms of, I mean, if there are any specific questions around any of the specific items, whether it's stormwater, which I think we talked about some last week, and short-term vacation rental, any of those things, we have folks here if there are any specific questions we need to get into. But I think generally we're in a position where with this budget passing, we'll be able to fill some critical vacancies, go through some process improvement, and come back to council with some recommendations and strategies moving forward.
I think that most of the questions were not budgetary questions so much as so if not now, when, what are we going to get back in the game again and do something? And so when do you see that coming forward?
I'm trying to recall, maybe Chairman Henderson help. There's a deadline for council members to submit.
That was the 27th or something like that.
Yeah. And then we will have, a couple of weeks to come back and present our plan for moving forward with these things.
Okay.
And some of it does depend. Dallas can speak to this better than I can, but we do have some very critical vacancies that need to be filled that we are actively. I know that they're interviewing folks now for some of these positions, but having market rate competitive pay for some of these positions will be a tremendous help to get us to where we need to be.
Thank you, Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Light was in regards to back to our paving when we were queued as disabled. So if I can skip back.
Sure.
Chief, I want to say thanks, number one, for working with us on the paving list. And to ask you if we still have some room for a little conversation. I was about halfway through my list when it kind of came out, but I was happy. Let me make that clear. I was happy to see how our list almost matched up, identical, which tells me your folks working on this have been paying attention. And either that or they've been listening, because the list was really very close to the time that I've spent in the district. And so I just wanted to say thank you for that. And maybe a little tweak here and there. I think in District 4, if you really listen, the administration and staff, and I really appreciate the effort coming forward in District 4.
Thank you. And yes, I mean, I've spoken to a few of you already about the paving list and some potential changes. We will, of course, evaluate any of the requests that we get to make changes, and we'll also, provide a case for why we think we perhaps should not make any changes based on the amount of money we have budgeted, the way we've tried to group the roads to be more efficient. But yeah, there's definitely room to switch some things out. There may be roads that are priority, you think are much higher priority than what we see, and we can swap and push things out a year or two. I mean, there are options, but yes, generally, we've tried to create a listing that is based on the pavement condition indexes, based on conversations with council members over the past year, and an effort to group roads together to decrease mobilization costs and increase the amount of money that goes into laying asphalt.
You good?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Great. Okay. The next thing was the community center plan.
Madam Chair, if I recall, one of the questions was about changes to the community centers from year to year. So we went back and looked at a comparison between fiscal year 21 and fiscal year 22. The total amount budgeted for each, if you combine the community center cost centers together, the total budgeted amount for fiscal year 22 is $18,737 less than the prior year. So in total, it's essentially the same budget from year to year. There is movement between centers. And there's also some of the changes are because there's been benefit change, changes in benefit cost or changes in salaries. If someone, retired and we replace them with a newer person, the salary may be lower, those sorts of things. But otherwise, there's not any really significant changes. We do have a couple of centers where we've moved people around between centers based on usage and demand, but otherwise it's essentially the same. Also, all of the centers have the same programming budget. So regardless of which center it is, they have the same dollars to use for programming within their center. And then the other question was related to summer camps. We did confirm that summer camp was previously budgeted as a cost center called Kids Camp in the YFD budget. The new budget is in Parks and Outdoors, and it's called PO Summer Camp, Parks and Outdoor Summer Camp. So that line item is totally separate. It's not impacted. It doesn't impact the community center budgets. And that programming will be provided, just like it has in the past, but we will try to be a little more intentional about having different programming for summer camps based on what the needs are at the community centers. We will also look at down the road as we get closer to this, we may move that cost center to community development. So it's more closely tied to the community centers versus the reason it's in Parks and Outdoors is because it was always under the recreation function of YFD, but we may look at moving that to make sure that it's more intertwined.
So there were several questions. Did you all get your questions answered? Chair Anderson, you had something about super centers. Is that all answered to you?
And my question kind of revolved around, I guess, I don't know if it's an official term, but we've certainly referred to some of our centers as super centers, and then others are just rec centers or community centers. But I couldn't tell really that there was a difference in funding at each level. Some, what I would consider just a regular community center, had a budget much larger than some of the super centers. And I was just curious as to how we formulated the budgets. And you mentioned that one of the possibilities could be utilities, which if that's the case, we need to address that issue. But it looks like to me the community center the funding would be in line with what we sort of deem them as.
Yeah, I think generally it really depends on how many people we have staffed at each center and what the staffing requirements are, which varies by the center. Even though Brainerd is a larger center, it may actually have less staffing for certain parts of the center than somewhere like Carver or Avondale because of the usage. There may be more kids at certain points of the day that requires more coverage from adults. So I think it varies. I think generally what I would say is we didn't really change anything related to staffing of the community centers compared to what it has been for the past few years. I think as we move into, once this budget is passed, however it gets passed, we will move into the next phase of our essentially our transition, where we start forming the neighborhood advisory committees that are going to help us determine what programming is available at each community center across the city. We've mentioned this before. The needs at Avondale are different than the needs in Hickson and the needs at John A. Patton, for example. So once we get into that portion of reimagining what the community centers are doing, I think that at that point is when we would look at shifting dollars around and making more intentional, creating staffing models, for example, for each of the centers based on what the programming looks like, what the needs are, and what the usage is for the center. So I think last week, Councilman Byrd mentioned he has 4 centers, relatively close to each other in his district. And some of them have just significantly different usage, even though they're only a block or two apart. And some of that is because of, the people that work in the centers, how long they've been there, what kind of relationships they've developed with the kids in the community, those sorts of things. So until we get a little bit deeper, our new reorganized development of the community center model versus the YFD center model, I don't think it's really prudent to make any changes until we get down into that detail.
So what do we use to determine whether a center is a super center or not? Is it just the size of the building or the number of kids that's able to be served there or what?
I think historically that term has just been applied to larger centers, or the ones that have been around for the longest period of time, the ones where more community meetings are held. We don't have an internal definition really of what a super center is. Depending on who you ask, some people call Avondale a super center, and some people don't. I think part of that's because it's a new building, right? Brainerd has historically been referred to as a super center because it is one of the larger centers. Even back when it was a recreation center, it was the largest one. South Chattanooga as well because of its size and the usage. But I would say that we don't have any formal definition of what is a super center versus just a regular center. We are going to start referring to all of them as community centers, and that's it.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Councilwoman Coonrod.
Thank you, Chair. I think, Brent, we discussed it about the camp funds earlier on. I still have some concerns about that. My opinion that I just don't think it should be placed there. I think they shouldn't dictate what programming is happening in our community centers, that, because like you stated before, is that each center is different and the needs of the community is different. And historically, the Black centers were pretty much, I'll just speak for myself, Eastfield and Glenwood, the programming that we're getting doesn't match the way my community looks because it's not predominantly Black. So everybody isn't playing football and basketball. We need a little diversity. And I also like to see the staff to be diversified, because people need to be able, as they grow up, they need to be able to interact with people who don't look like them or identify as they do, so they can be better, acting in society. It shouldn't just reflect people that look like them. Everybody's behaviors and cultures are different. And I believe that with the transitioning of our communities, our hubs need to reflect that. So that's what I would really like to see. I know some people may be uncomfortable with that, but I think it's time that it needs to happen. We shouldn't be segregated in that way. And my white constituents should feel comfortable and safe coming to recreation centers. So that's my only thing.
Yeah, and as I mentioned just a moment ago, I think we will, once we get to the point of having the neighborhood advisory councils that help us determine what programming should be available, I think that's the right time for us to look at reallocating summer camp funds to the community centers. Historically, they've always been in a separate cost center, but that doesn't mean they have to be going forward. So I think that's something that we definitely want to look at once we get through the process of reimagining how the community centers operate.
Are you good, Councilwoman? Okay. The last issue we had before we go into to Councilwoman Coonrod's committee was Baby University. There were questions about that.
I'll ask Joe to come up and tell you everything you ever wanted to know about Baby University.
Good afternoon, Council. I'm happy to answer any specific questions that you guys might have. I'll just really quickly review a few of the key goals. I've circulated a piece of paper, a couple of sheets with some facts from the cumulative success of the program and why we decided that they would be an agency that we funded. So the four key program goals, or three rather, are to one, ensure that families embrace healthy lifestyles and long-term stability. Two, that children succeed in school and life, and that teen parents have some specific goals around remaining in school and on-time graduation. And so Baby University partnered with the UTC College of Social Work, Office of Research and Public Service, and they provided independent evaluation. And that was actually something that provided a lot of reassurance to our team, and then also a lot of confidence in the results of the program. They provide pre and post assessments to measure families' self-sufficiency across a couple of different domains. But ultimately in 2020, there were about 370-ish families served. I can't remember exactly. I've got some data that was a little less updated than the one that you have, which is from December 2020. And that includes over 60 teen parents, and then over 100 children born to pregnant women. But there were ultimately over 800 individuals served through this program. And I've got some notes on cost savings. They're indirect. The independent evaluators assessed that the total cost of Baby University from 2015 to 2020 was around $3.25 million. But the impact avoidance cost savings, these are consequences that we did not incur as a community. Not all of these costs would be borne by the city, whether they be the medical costs of low birth weight, the cost to the individual for not graduating high school or college was somewhere around $10.9 million. And so it is somewhat unusual for us to see an agency request funding that provides an independent evaluation. So that's something that we're going to be encouraging agencies to do if at all possible. But I'm happy to answer any other specific questions about the program and why we decided that we would go ahead and fund them.
Councilman Henderson?
Thank you. So Joda, if I understood you right now, my sheet of paper, if I was doing the math right, it looked like it showed it was serving about 550 individuals.
Yeah, you've got a couple more months of data than I'm looking at right now. I put
I
this
thought I
together
understood you to say 800. Is that-
Well, so it's I think that those numbers don't include 2021. So that goes to December 2020.
Okay, so it's just a matter of the cutoff.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's right.
So roughly per year, they're serving 500 people, 550 or something.
I think those are cumulative numbers. So I think I'd have to go back and get exactly how the pandemic has changed the numbers, but they've cumulatively served around 800-ish. So I think the numbers end up being 100 or so, or rather, sorry, a little north of 175 a year.
How many?
Nearly a little over 175 individuals a year.
175.
Well, so again, the data is cumulative. So the data that you have in front of you is from 2015 to 2020.
So we
Is
don't
that
know how many
individuals or families.
So what I had asked for is how many families or how many people per year
Gotcha.
we were serving.
I can go back and pull a little bit more of that data, but I'd have to pull it out. The evaluation that we were provided was over a 5-year time span.
Okay. And the other question I asked is, do we know for certain that these are Chattanooga residents?
I believe so. So I can check with our folks over at Baby University, but I'm pretty certain that they're all Chattanooga residents.
Because it looked like when they came last week, 2 weeks
I believe
ago,
that family had moved originally.
Say it again.
I believe that family had moved originally from Chattanooga.
Right.
Yes,
But we were still serving them.
I believe so.
So I'm assuming that we don't cut them off then. If we have served them, we continue serving them.
I imagine the case managers do keep contact. The case managers may keep contact. I'll have to ask.
So we don't, I guess we don't have any guarantees or any certainty that these dollars are only being spent on Chattanooga residents.
I'll have to confirm with Baby University.
Thank you.
You good?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
The question that was also tossed out, I heard Councilwoman Hill say is this families or individuals?
So there's a breakdown on your sheet of families, and then underneath it will list the individuals.
Okay. Councilwoman Coonrod.
Thank you, Chair. I feel the same way Councilman Henderson do, especially when we talk about that basketball that we give $100,000 to, and majority of the participants are not Chattanooga residents, but anywho, on here, I noticed that the number of the 211 people or families, do you know if they have any kind of sex education or safe sex classes to prevent the teens from getting pregnant?
I believe so. So they had they had a number of families that they served, which was preventative education for ensuring that teen mothers who had gotten pregnant once did not get pregnant again before graduating high school.
Okay, that's great. And then we had the adults to come, but do we have any fathers that are teens that participate in this program?
I believe they assist the whole family.
Okay, the entire family. Okay, thank you.
You good? All right. So I received nothing else to backtrack on, any other follow-up information. So we'll move on. We have two areas to cover. One is economic development and the other is the capital budget. Councilwoman Coonrod, what we've been doing is, I received no questions on economic development. So what we've been doing is letting Brent make his presentation on economic development. And then you, as chair of that committee, can follow up with anything that you have not had answered. So Brent.
If it pleases the council, I'd like to go ahead and defer to Jermaine Freeman to
Oh,
give
sure.
an overview
Fine.
and answer any questions related to economic development.
Sure.
Thank you.
Welcome, Jermaine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate it. So Jermaine Freeman, Senior Advisor to the Mayor for Economic Opportunity. So the Department of Economic Development will look slightly different from years past when the department was combined with Community Development, which my able colleague Tony Sammons is now the administrator of. This budget will preserve familiar positions such as the Administrator for Economic Development, as well as the Director of Public Art, but it will also include a couple of new positions, including the Director of Arts, Culture, and the Creative Economy, and also create positions in economic development to provide project management capacity. The Department of Economic Development currently consists of staff in the following areas: economic development, workforce development, real property, brownfields, public art, and the federally funded affordable housing positions. As part of Mayor Kelly's vision for an expansion of economic development opportunities for all citizens across the city, the Department of Economic Development will be focused on the growth and enhancement of our competitive advantages and our best resources, our people. As our city continues to grow, our economic development opportunities will grow and so will our challenges. This budget allows us to begin building a solid team of economic development professionals that can leverage the city's assets to make us competitive for the economy of the future. The Department of Economic Development will aggressively pursue opportunities for talent development of our citizens, entrepreneurship and small business growth, creation of jobs with livable wages, affordable housing strategies, and recreating a strong Black middle class. And we will be more involved in targeting and recruiting companies to Chattanooga, as well as working to facilitate the continued growth of companies which are already here. The Kelly administration, through the Department of Economic Development, will be extremely focused on the issues of talent development, entrepreneurship, and affordable housing. On the talent side, we applaud the progress and strides of our local school system and the growth of the Future Ready Institutes. But the city must continue to focus on the talent development of all adults, and we must not forget about those adults who are unemployed, underemployed, or who have made mistakes in their past. No, the answer for everyone is not a college degree, but everyone must develop a skill or credential that can be used to gain meaningful work or launch a thriving business. With around 40% of our city's adults in possession of a post-secondary credential, we have a long way before we can honestly say that our labor force is ready to take advantage of the job opportunities of the future. Automation, remote work opportunities, and the COVID-19 pandemic will continue to force our local economy to respond to changes in the traditional workplace. Our community members must be in positions where they can weather the turbulent changes within today's labor market. On the entrepreneurial side, we know the pandemic has devastated small businesses across the country and in our own community. Small businesses owned by people of color have been especially hard hit because they weren't as well capitalized to begin with. Spurring entrepreneurship has the potential to create wealth and income for small business owners, but it also creates jobs for people who may not be able to find work elsewhere. This budget will allow our department to leverage the potential economic benefits of promoting and growing a sector of our economy focused on artistic and cultural assets, events, and opportunities. By working closely with the Tivoli Foundation, Chattanooga Tourism Company, and local event organizations and artistic organizations, we can and should be focused on growing the artistic and cultural sectors of our economy. In closing, there is not one way to grow and expand our economy, but we know there are some things that we must do if we want to be competitive for the future. We must aggressively pursue affordable housing initiatives, talent and workforce development opportunities, and we must do everything we can to support our small business ecosystem and entrepreneurs, and we must recruit the companies that we want. We must create opportunities for everyone to grow and thrive and live the lives of their choosing. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Councilman Hester.
I think I raised my hand up when Joda was up for Baby U. I was.
Go ahead. If
But interesting. You said we're going to raise the Black middle class.
Yes, sir.
Right. That's a task. So I'm glad that the mayor is aware that there is a problem in the city of Chattanooga. So thank you guys for that, for your efforts. Anyway.
Yes, sir. I don't think that we think that in any way we will be able to solve all of our economic challenges in one mayoral term or in one political administration. These challenges have faced our city for a long time. There have been disparities in our communities for decades. And so we are, our eyes are wide open about the challenges and the tasks that face us. But we were put here to try. And so that is the reason that we're here, and that's what we intend to do. And so when we say that we want to raise a Black middle class, I think what Mayor Kelly means is that we want to strengthen and grow the Black middle class. And we believe that talent development, as well as a focus on entrepreneurial development, is the way to get there.
Thank you.
Councilman, did you have a question about Baby U? I somehow didn't see your light.
The question for Joda, we're told that we're going to incorporate the Baby U to in the community centers. So what type of programming you guys have in the community centers?
Well, I'll go ahead and speak for the workforce side. We do intend to do some workforce development opportunities in our community centers because we understand that transportation is a real barrier for people. And so it makes it a lot easier for people to get the skills and the talent development that they need if those opportunities are in their neighborhoods at centers that are close to where they live, that are easily accessible. And so I anticipate and expect that we would do the same thing with Baby University and any of our programs. I mean, I think statistically, if you look at where Baby University serves, I believe a lot of it is concentrated in the inner city. And so we have community centers that people could go to for those resources, whether it's the East Lake Community Center, or which of course is under renovation right now, as well as East Chattanooga, Carver, Glenwood, Avondale. So, I mean, I think that's probably what Joda means, but I'll let him jump in.
Yes, and we're going to be asking Baby University to make some modifications and changes to their programs to better align with our broader strategy to bring resources out to the community. So they have previously been, I think, involved with our community centers, but I know that we are going to be asking them to drive more resources into the community centers that are closest to the neighborhoods that they serve.
Anything further, Councilman?
No, thank you.
Okay. Chair Henderson.
Thank you. Jermaine, you were talking about trying to increase Black entrepreneurship or Black owned businesses and so on and so forth. And in discussions that I've been having with some leaders in the Black community, access to capital seems to be one of the biggest hindrances for someone starting a business. And I know when I started mine, I had to have access to capital in order to get even a business license, a bid limit. And I think with these American Rescue dollars that we'll be getting in very shortly, I think there's an opportunity there to perhaps create a bucket of money that we could use that would be accessible to the Black community to have that access to capital that many do not have, and that is sometimes a barrier and a hindrance to being able to start or own a business. We all know in order to run a business, you've got to have capital and have access to capital. And I think those are sort of some of the things that we probably need to be looking at in order to increase those Black ownerships of businesses and entrepreneurships in the city.
We certainly are looking at that, and I appreciate those comments, Chairman Henderson. We are proud of the fact that Pathway Lending has now launched a $7.5 million small business fund directly targeting local Chattanooga small businesses, and that they have a target of making sure that they can put out a lot of money to Black-owned businesses as well. But to your point, Mayor Kelly is in absolute agreement that we should be using American Rescue Plan dollars to help provide more access to capital for our small businesses. And so that's something that we're looking at doing.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
You good?
Yep.
Okay, Councilwoman Coonrod.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you, Chairman Henderson, for your allyship and that talking about the workforce and having access to capital and raising our middle class for Black Chattanoogans. But my question is, under here with the workforce development, we previously had some issues with that. I'm smiling up under this mask. Dr. Harwood, or I'm not sure if he's still in that position or not, but we're not running a campaign when we're trying to, like canvassing that kind of stuff. And that's kind of how he ran it. I think it needs to look a little different. So what does that department, is it gonna look like moving forward?
Yeah, I think going forward, and I don't want to talk about any specific personnel, but I think that going forward, what we want to do is we want to make sure that our workforce development department is more strategically focused and aligned with the goals of the administration. And so if we believe that we want to grow a Black middle class or help people be in a position to grab livable wage jobs, we have to focus more on helping people to obtain either the certifications or the post-secondary credentials that they need in order to be successful. There are plenty of livable wage jobs out here that you can get that you don't need a college degree for. And I certainly won't tell you that everybody needs to have a college degree, but we do need to be more strategic in terms of focusing and helping people to obtain a post-secondary credential or a certificate or a skill of some sort where they can, because that can take them out of the cycle of getting a job just for the sake of getting a job where they're really underemployed, and then keeping the job for 3 to 6 months, and then coming back to our Office of Workforce Development to look for another job in 3 to 6 months and going through that same cycle all over again. So the idea is that we can be more strategic around helping people to achieve, to not only to get a livable wage job, but to get the certification and the credential that they need.
And then I heard you mention that persons that have background challenges, and part of Governor Bill Lee, yes, I am a fan of his, but part of his legislative work was helping people with those background challenges to be able to, get a certifications and licensure. So if they wanted to become a real estate agent, medical assistant, any of those things, that skill set, I would like to see that be a part of this, whomever the staff person may be, because that's a critical portion on trying to get Black Chattanoogans into middle class.
It is. And not to cut you off, but there are oftentimes with people who have background issues, one of the ways that studies have shown that can be very helpful in order to help them to get back on track is to also steer them towards opportunities in entrepreneurship. So to the point about the real estate agent, there's no reason why someone who may have made a mistake in their past they still may be able to start their own business or their own franchise of something so that they can create wealth and create jobs for people.
That's right. And you sound so excited with your answer. I really appreciate that. And I wrote a couple of things down. So affordable housing, we talk a lot about that. And I think, in my opinion, we use that word affordable a little too loosely, because we have a lot of affordable housing. I mean, some people can't afford to live here or there, but it's affordable for whoever can. And I think the word low income housing is really associated with poorness. So I'm not sure if we need to look in a dictionary for a different word for that, so we can kind of remove that stigma. But we had the so-called affordable housing fund of $1 million or so. I'm not sure if it's still at that amount.
We do
But
still have it.
what is the goal to target that and to communities that have historically been neglected as far as their housing needs? And not, I mean, I get like our CSGBD funds or whatever it's called, like that kind of go to our nonprofit organizations to kind of build houses. But this fund in particular, what are we doing to kind of incentivize for people to come into those districts to create housing? And another tag on to that is multi-family housing. Because we're in a dire need where we need housing. Everybody doesn't want to be in a single family home now. We have a lot of people, millennials and such, that are moving here that are dinks. Like, you know, they're double income, no kids, they got dogs and cats. So I think we need to make, you know, our community should look reflective of that. If those who want to buy a single family home, cool. If you want to live in a duplex, that should be fine. A townhouse, like, we need to have, you know, a variety of housing options that can be affordable to different people at different income levels.
Absolutely. The Kelly administration fully agrees with that. On the Affordable Housing Fund, that fund is still currently in effect. I believe that right now it's capitalized at about $3 million. Funds from the Affordable Housing Fund are typically used for developers as well as for nonprofit organizations that are typically doing different types of affordable housing projects that are usually urban infill projects. So they're usually projects where they're redeveloping property that's usually in the urban core of the city. As we go forward, what I think you're going to see from the Kelly administration is we are going to be very aggressive in the pursuit of affordable housing, which means that we have to have an honest conversation about density and that we have to have an honest conversation about development. In order for us to build housing at different incomes that people can benefit from, we have to build in the aggregate more housing in general. And so that is something that you're going to see us aggressively pursue over the coming months.
Okay, I appreciate that. And then part of this, Black, I mean, you had my brother over there stunned, speechless when you talk about creating a path for Black middle class or increasing it. But we've got a guy that's here on our staff, Mr. Brock, that, you know, that's his role, intergovernmental affairs and different things like that. Like, I would really love to see him nudge our president. I mean, we all clapped or whatever, but however, he only gave us Juneteenth. So in order to, we need to be soliciting some kind of funding or have some kind of lobbyists going on. I'm not sure if that's part of his role from the federal level to come down to the state. And I'm sure he and, you know, our governor are friends, but it's gonna take more than just symbolic legislation to move Black people to the middle class. And we gotta be, and I've heard you say several times, like, that's the vision and the mission of our mayor and his administration, and I'm thankful for that. But we gotta be aggressive with our approach to let people know, like, hey, we really want to concentrate on this target group of people, which is Black people, to move them to the middle class, because without that, we're going to continue to be behind the ball.
Yes, we are always pursuing opportunities at the federal level, including the pursuit of federal grants. And we do have folks that we work with to help us in those efforts. My colleague, Mr. Brock, has been very beneficial to the Kelly administration in terms of helping us really more at the state legislator side, which is also something that we need, because oftentimes, I mean, as you well know, the state right now is in possession of tremendous financial resources. And so getting and unlocking some of those resources to come to the cities is something that's really important to us. And so I know that, and I can let Mr. Brock speak a bit more about his role, but he has been very helpful in helping us to build better relationships with our state delegation and helping us to sort of move in the same direction. For example, although he's not part of our state delegation, but Congressman Fleischman was very instrumental and helping us to secure the $3.5 million grant that we got to develop the Office of Community Health, which Dr. Lambert currently presides over. And so it's those relationships that really matter.
Thank you. I appreciate you answering my questions. And I just want to leave one important piece is that our previous president, I know a lot of people try to undermine him, but he had some important legislation that was passed that actually helped Black people. And I know a lot of people may not agree with that, but most importantly, that my concern is with that First Step Act. It was a lot of funding that trickled in to make sure that people got employed, that had background challenges, or people that was just wanted to re-enter the workforce, had childcare components, a lot of stuff that is beneficial to Black people and poor white people that live in impoverished communities. And I think it's a time for us to capitalize on that and make sure that we're still taking advantage of those funds, because the census report has been released. And I think it's time to take a look at those areas that have changed that could benefit from that money. Thank you.
Absolutely. You are now the chair of the Economic Development Committee, so I look forward to a long and fruitful relationship.
Me too. Thanks. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Councilman Hester.
Far as entrepreneurship, it's hard out there for as creating your own business and all that. With the workforce, would they help train these potential entrepreneurs and to keep a level of professionalism? Is that their job to do that?
No, so we have technical assistance providers out in the ecosystem that can provide the training and the workshops that you're thinking of to help someone, better learn how to balance inventory or how to use QuickBooks or how to do some of the things that come along with running a business. SCORE, the Tennessee Small Business Development Center, the Urban League. There are a number of different organizations that are out there, Proof Incubator. There are a number of different organizations out there that can provide that kind of technical assistance to help someone on the entrepreneurial side. There are, workforce opportunities out there that do provide like soft skills classes to people to help people with sort of the more sort of decorum or expectation issues that come with working in a professional environment. And so there's certainly organizations out there that also do those. As part of our workforce development efforts in the past, we partnered with Chattanooga State on some of those sort of soft skills classes. And so that is certainly something that we can do. But the primary mission of the city's workforce development is to direct a strategy whereby we are convening all of the different partners in the ecosystem to make sure that people are moving in the same direction with the focus on making sure that adults are at full employment and really getting the opportunities that they want. Again, we applaud everything that the school system has done in terms of the Future Ready Institutes and in terms of preparation for high school students, but there will always be adults that will come to the city because they feel like they don't have another option in terms of their employment opportunities. And so the Office of Workforce Development is there to convene partners to help them.
Thank you.
You good, Councilman?
I'm good.
Okay. Councilwoman Hill, I saw your light on it first. Are you ready to move on? Okay. All right. I see nothing else for economic development. And so it's time to move on to the capital budget. Who's doing that?
I don't, excuse me, I don't really have anything additional to add to what we did in the original presentation, other than it's a $57 million capital budget. It's got significant investments in paving, in sidewalks, community center renovations, parks, playgrounds. I think if you look at it, the way it's laid out, and we broke it into different buckets like roads, parks and outdoors, greenways, those sorts of things, community investments. only $500,000 of the capital budget is earmarked for downtown. The remaining portions of the budget, unless there are road projects in the downtown area, is all earmarked for investment in the community outside of downtown. While we don't need to ignore downtown, it is the economic engine of, and of course, Councilwoman Dotley, your neighborhoods around downtown still have plenty of investment in them, but we recognize the fact that we need to invest dollars into the neighborhoods, into the community, while also making sure that we balance this over a long-term plan to make sure that we're doing what we need to do downtown as well as in the neighborhood. So, I think almost $20 million in road projects between paving and other projects that are non-paving projects. I think that's significant and it's going to go a long way. We're going to invest at least $10 million per year for 4 years in paving. I think $40 million will get us quite a bit down the road on paving, get us caught up. So overall, I think this reflects the administration's desire to invest in the community, and happy to answer any specific questions around the capital budget.
You've done a really good job. Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I feel like I'm kind of repeating a statement I made earlier, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention the attention in District 4, especially on Davidson Road. Many of you may not have heard me ever mention that road.
Never, sir.
Davidson. Yeah,
Davidson,
Davidson. I'm
right.
not sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
In case you missed it,
Yeah.
somewhere down the road. But when I took office, my first term, in that road was very important. Go back, rewind. I'm going to go back 20 years. That road was important. And we made a lot of progress. I do give the past administration progress, or kudos for helping me get the ball moving on Davidson. I feel this administration has really listened to the people of District 4. And I see in the capital budget, we are going to finish Davidson Road from Doty to Gun Barrel. And I want to say thank you for listening. I want to say thank you for going into some of the neighborhoods that were affected by the tornado, because those folks have had their lives completely uprooted. And I feel that you have, once again, you've listened. And I'm glad to see this money into paving and this focus into paving, because it's just some things, some districts just are very simple. I mean, we are blessed out in District 4 to worry about roads and trash pickup and whatnot. We have our problems with crime, obviously, that's no one's immune. But I feel like you're listening to council representatives. I feel like you're working with us. And I just want to say thank you from District 4 for paying attention and really getting down on putting asphalt where the rubber meets the road. So appreciate the cooperation and the outreach to District 4.
Thank you, Councilman Ledford.
Kind words. Councilwoman Hill.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I can say that District 2 really appreciated the presence of the mayor's staff and our first responders at our budget Q&A last night. We had numerous neighborhoods represented, and they asked some really thoughtful and detailed questions and got great answers. So thank you for that. Coming out of that, I do have concerns about the paving plan, and you and I have discussed those, Brent. But I did want to point out two things, two kind of theme areas within the capital budget. One specific to District 2, but then the other overall. We've talked a lot today already about community centers. And as I studied the community center capital budget, I was struck by these words within the document. Community centers are a vital part of every community. They serve as the legacy backbone that spans generations. Each community is recognized by the center that is the face of that area. District 2, we have one community center that the community is not actually even allowed to go into. If it's a rainy day and a child wants to get out of the rain and play in a gym, they're told they are not allowed in the door. And if a neighborhood association wants to meet, they are told that they aren't going to last very long and they're not allowed to meet there. So I would very much like to work with the Kelly administration to build some community in District 2. And I'll be looking at other areas of our district where perhaps we can actually create some places where people can gather. Because aside from paying for parking at Coolidge Park, we don't have that. And our neighborhoods have changed a lot in the last 30 years and become really full of families throughout the district. And so as you all talk about community centers, it's super exciting to imagine that that could exist in District 2. The other thing I wanted to address, and this is more of a request, not a question. In the education section, starting on page C11, as the chair of the education committee, I wanted to reiterate to the team that we have some specific goals as a council that include increasing kindergarten readiness. And the city is asking to fund some important things, including an appropriation to the Montessori Elementary at Highland Park to assist with implementing their pre-K program. An appropriation to Purpose Point Learning Academy. It's a new early learning center in East Chattanooga that will be opening this August. And then also the Quality Matters Capital Fund, which is an appropriation to United Way to help smaller childcare centers actually receive small capital grants to improve their programs so they can offer a higher quality program. All of these sound like good investments. And I think I want you all to be aware that as a council, we're definitely going to be looking at the results of those. So I ask, as we head into especially the Montessori and the Purpose Point Learning Academy, that we pursue a memorandum of understanding related to student data so that we can know, are the Montessori kids ready for kindergarten? Are the Purpose Point Learning Academy kids ready for kindergarten? That, if so, that's going to really tell us, that that is an investment well spent.
So I'll let Joda speak to that briefly, but one thing I'll mention, like Montessori in particular, they did request funding for both recurring operating funds and capital funds. We didn't think it was in the best interest of the city to supplement operating funding, but we did think that it made sense to provide some capital investment to help create new seats that did not exist in the neighborhood previously. So with that, I'll turn it over to Joda for the question about MOUs and data.
Thank you for that, Councilwoman Hill. Absolutely. We are going to be working with our early learning providers and our new administrator of early learning to make sure that we have a much more robust understanding of what programs are working. And one of the things that I'm really excited about is actually a cross-departmental collaboration with the Department of Innovation, Delivery, and Performance, where we have a allocated program evaluator, which is going to be a really exciting opportunity to really dig into not only early learning, but other programs as well. But we are absolutely going to be asking for data from any early learning program that we're supporting. And I think that leads to confidence whenever we go and fund a program that there's actually the results that we want to see year over year. So yes.
And it sounds like based on the questions Chairman Henderson's been asking, that for us to have a standardized list of data that's kind of non-negotiable, that if you want to partner with this, if you're looking for an appropriation for the city, that in good faith, this is data that we need to know that we're helping move Chattanoogans forward.
Yeah. I think that's something that absolutely aligns with Mayor Kelly's vision for more accountability for city funding. And that's something we can certainly talk about and look into. I just will follow up really quickly. I did confirm that the eligibility requirements for Baby University do require that you live in the city of Chattanooga. I've asked a specific follow-up question about the family that was present, but you are supposed to be a city of Chattanooga resident to be eligible for services through that program.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's all.
Thank you, ma'am. Brent, I gotta say for the record, thank you very, very much from all of Shallowford Road, Hickory Valley Road, everything over in that part of town, finally putting in the Standiford Gap Bridge replacement. I think this is
I'll
my
take all the credit,
colleagues and
yes.
I have heard about this for so long. And we have gotten so much bureaucratic speak about planning and all this stuff. And to finally see it, everybody, cameras, it's in the budget. That bridge is going to get fixed. Thank you for being so patient. I have the scars. Some of my colleagues have the scars. And thank you very, very much for making that happen. Also the sidewalks on Brainerd Road so that people can get to work, so that they can do that. Those are two that have been oft overlooked or messed up. And thank you very much for that happening.
Thank you. And if I could, I would like to just say, our folks in the Transportation Division of Public Works have done a lot of hard work to make sure that we are using the taxpayer dollars the best we possibly can and make it go as far as we can. And also Justin Steinman is here, and he's the man behind the curtain with the capital budget. It's a nice laid out, pretty document for everyone to read, but a lot of work goes into preparing and planning for all these large projects. So I just wanted to say thank you to those folks.
Justin has done a fabulous job. One of the things that's part of my marching orders is to make sure we have updates on capital funds and how they're being used quarterly. And Justin's done a great job of that. So thank you very, very much. The council appreciates that. Councilman Ledford.
This question might be for Joda. Joda, is there a way, Chief, for you as well, to, based on what Councilwoman Hill said, to make that data report a mandatory part of reapplication when you apply for funding? I mean, that's just part of, if you're coming back to us.
We certainly can. We're looking, and as you know, we had a brief period of time to put this budget together. But as we head into the next budget, we are reworking our budget process, and that certainly can be one of the things that we request. I think for any agencies that are particularly where we are going to be looking at specific goals around early learning, for example, we can ask for those kinds of metrics as a prerequisite for a re-up of funding.
Yeah, I think it feels like it's a great idea. It gets them used to
I
it,
agree.
but it also gives us up-to-date information, and we don't have to ask for it.
My former job before coming here to the city of Chattanooga was the Community Foundation of Greater Chattanooga, and we require things exactly like that. So I think that's absolutely in line with expectations that nonprofits are used to meeting.
Very good, very good. I want to thank Councilwoman Hill for bringing that up, because that's what spurred that question. Thank you.
Thank you,
If
Councilman.
I could add to that, I mentioned this last week and I'll mention it again. I think we're at a moment in time where we need to get to a place where nonprofits don't just expect us to give them funding. We need to be much more intentional about what we're doing, make sure it aligns. So next year, going into the appropriation process, you will see a much more robust process, and the types of information we're going to require is going to be for the purpose of ensuring that what the work that they're going to do with the funds lines up with our goals and our vision, and we will expect results from those dollars.
We're very glad to hear that. Several council people have over and over again requested impact. Did it make a difference? These are taxpayer dollars. We've spoken about that a lot. So thank you very, very much. My friends, that concludes our education sessions. Yes.
Made me active, but then call on.
Well, let me call on you now. Sorry. I didn't. Yeah, go.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. I just wanted to get in there real quick. But I wanted to say thank you for making the investment. I mean, I don't know if it's going to pass or not in both of these entities, because the mayor, he campaigned on creating additional seats for early learning opportunities and, to partner with educational things. And they stood up and said, hey, I want to be a part of that initiative. Also, what the Montessori does, it expands opportunity to people who typically cannot afford to pay the money to participate in a Montessori setting, which can be extremely high if you just can't afford to pay it. And so thank you for that. And then secondly, I just want to say is that this Purpose Point is a African-American led establishment. And what I don't want to happen is that we getting into the mindset to say we want to make sure we putting all these requirements on people when they trying to get funding for something that the administration has said we asking people to be a part of, because that begins to make them feel as if maybe I shouldn't apply. And we already know how difficult it is for Black establishment to get funded, and the obstacles that they have to, but I would like to say, and not just for establishments that just these particular ones, when it comes to the education, because we already have the city of Chattanooga that maintain early learning sites like the Newton Center, Avondale, the one on the hill that doesn't do great at all, and making sure our kids are transitioning to make sure that they're kindergarten ready. So the question need to be, what are we doing? We put in high expectations on Purpose Point in the Montessori school, which are great organizations, but we're not asking for the data from our own government entity. So that need to be added into the wheelhouse too.
I completely agree. So one, I actually want to point out that we are restoring a position in the Department of Early Learning, which is a business navigator position, which Angela held prior to becoming the director of early learning. And so we aren't going to be simply requesting data sight unseen and then hoping that the organization can meet the requirements, but rather what we want to do is provide the support for the agencies that we're funding to help ensure that they are able to meet those goals, and that the Department of Early Learning is actually providing the technical assistance, strategic resources, and yes, the finances is necessary to help them meet their goals. And then finally, I had a great conversation this week with the folks who run our program tutors operation at our community centers, and we're going to be making sure they're deeply integrated with that work as well, not only through the management process of actually getting kids access to those tutors, but making sure that they have the curricula and pedagogy that is actually successful. So that's something that we're certainly paying attention to for our internal programs as well.
Well, I appreciate that, Joda, but again, I just really had the concern about, because I know how that could be in the Black community, and I'm going to take ownership to speak for it, as I know how they can be projected, and a lot of Black organizations will not solicit funding because we already got red flags and additional red flags and red tape that they will have to go through can be preventive. And we want to be more inclusive when it comes to people applying for, to get particular funding, to be a part of what we've already asked them to be a part of. And because we can go through the budget and previous budgets and we can clearly see that is organizations that's funded time and time again, and we don't see the outcome that we would like to see as a council, but yet we still continue to fund those organizations. So
I think those are great concerns, Councilwoman. And I'll actually point out too that the mayor, myself, Daisy, were on a call this morning where we talked about using an equity lens in our budgeting process, where we are really thinking through how do we help organizations get to a point where they're prepared to submit multi-year budget requests. And so those are exactly the same kinds of concerns we're thinking about every day.
You good, Councilwoman? Good. Okay. So here's where we go from here. We have come to an end of our formal education sessions. Brent and his folks are available if you need any other talk sessions because you've got specific questions. Next week, we have public input scheduled. The week after that is the first vote, and the week after that is a second vote. If we hear nothing further, the assumption is that after we do the public input, you will be ready for the first vote. So if you feel otherwise at any time, or if at least 5 of you feel otherwise at any time, then we won't go forward with the first vote. You're in total control. If there are no other excuse me, Councilman Hester. Councilman Henderson wanted to speak about that. Right now, they're 3 o'clock and 6 o'clock. All right. 3 o'clock for Zoom, 3 to 5, and then 6 o'clock to 8 for people to be in person. And Chair Henderson, did you want to say anything further about that, or do you want me to continue?
Well, Madam Chair, I was going to mention.
Sure.
Wait, mic's active. As always, anytime we have the public address us through a Zoom meeting, we ask them to register prior to the meeting. So we will be asking for the folks that would like to address us at 3 o'clock, at the 3 o'clock public hearing, that they register prior to 3 o'clock. At 3 o'clock, we'll shut the registration off. We will use this 2 hours if needed. If we don't need the full 2 hours, then whatever time is remaining, we can use for our agenda session at the 3 o'clock meeting. And then the 6 o'clock meeting will be in person. Thank you, ma'am. Yes, at our 6 o'clock public hearing, we will allot the 2 hours. Obviously, if people, they quit coming, then we will continue with our regular business meeting.
Councilman, there was one other thing that we might want to clarify. For the hearing, the 6 to 8, it's a 2-minute time limit. Yeah. It's a 2-minute time limit. Just wanted to make that clear. Did you have something? I'm sorry. Yes. Are there any other questions about? We've already advertised this, but I just wanted everybody to have a roadmap of where we're going, and wanted to add the one piece about whenever we do a Zoom, we always require that people register ahead of time. So if you're going to do a Zoom at 3 o'clock, which is the only time, not at 6 o'clock, at 3 o'clock that the Zooms will be heard, then you need to get registered ahead of time. Okay, if there are no other questions, then I think we're through with this part of the budget process. And Mr. Chair, if there's nothing else, I think we adjourn till 3:30. Okay.